Morning, everyone. Hello. So I am Michael, as you've heard, and we've been talking we're going to be talking this month about love in action. Matthew, who was just up here now, was covering the worship part last week. I don't sing, I can't sing, so I was delighted to hear him talk about how worship does not just involve the singing. Yeah, thank you. I drink coffee during singing, just so you know. And I've been asked to speak on giving, and I have to say I kind of threw a curveball at the church leadership, and I said, can we talk about the power giving that grows, which is important, but can we talk about the power of generosity, please? Big word, and then there are my curveball words: through financial discipline. It's about financial discipline, because I need to reflect on my own journey, the journey that my wife Avril and I have had in being able to understand better for ourselves what giving is about. And it's the desire of everyone to want to be generous, isn't it? All of you, I know. When Linton was standing up here talking about those projects, and when he says, please indicate in the EFT, love bucket, love this, love that, everyone here is starting to think, maybe, how can I? Is it possible? Can I do it? We've been on that journey ourselves as a couple, as a family. But there are a couple of curveballs, again, to use the term, that have been part of our experience. When I was a teacher in the late 1980s, I was part of a team that did some work with Cape Town City Mission, a very old service Christian organization. I think it still exists in some parts today. And we raised 10 million rand, what is in today's terms 10 million rand, for a community center. So I know about fundraising. I left teaching, I went to work for Cape Town City Mission, and amongst other things, I ended up getting donations from a church called Stellenberg Chapel, which is actually the origin church of South Point as we know it today. We used to be based on the other side of Pinelands. In fact, one of the reasons my family and I attended Stellenberg was because I had met this church. I used to go there and collect a check. For those of you who are younger, that's a piece of paper on... all right. I'm so glad all the young people left. So there was that journey. I then went and worked for the Haven Night Shelters as its CEO and fundraiser. And Lisa Chayat and Cape Talk, some of you may or may not recall this, we introduced to street people and to the community of Cape Town who were caring about street people space bags, which was quite unique and different at the time. We raised an immense amount of money. I am still involved in various charities and trusts, mostly on a board level at this stage. I know people are fundamentally generous if you ask them to give. So the problem is not the generosity, the desire of people to be generous. The problem is in these last two words here, the financial discipline. That's where the challenge is. And Avril and I looked at a number of communities, looked at a number of families, looked at a number of people, and we said, we want to be generous, but we want to be generous like they are. Who are the successful givers? What does it take to be a successful giver? And we ended up discovering that we actually were asking the wrong question. But essentially what we wanted to be able to process was, could we, because we were typically a family that needed to move ourselves from indebtedness to debt, to discipline, to deliverance, and to donating. A journey that we kind of played around, mucked around with in our 30s and so on, and needed to come to terms with. Now, I need to say, I know there are people here in the room who are in their 20s. For those of you who didn't go to the youth program, who are younger than 20, what I'm going to talk about today is something you need to start doing today. And those of you who are older, There's no such thing as I'm too old to try this, too old to do this. What I'm going to talk about today, I'm challenging you to do today. I want you to get to the point where giving, as it was for us, we started out having giving as an afterthought. Giving was something, when I've got the leftover, after I've dinner, did I pay for? I want you to, with us, journey to get to the point where it was an afterthought and now it becomes a first fruit and not a leftover. It was an immense challenge. It's been a journey of note, and I'll touch on elements of it as I talk to you this morning. But it's been, I have to say, wonderful. And if you don't believe me, because I'm not a very believable person, my wife's a lot nicer. Go talk to her about it. She will tell you that this is a genuine story. But where do I start with ourselves as a community? How do we face the absolute truth and reality about life and about money? I know, because of the work I do, I'm still a consultant today. I know because of the work I do, the people I meet, the church folk I'm involved in, I know that these are the challenges that are faced by ordinary South Africans as you and I are in this room right now. If you have those who have jobs, most people think they earn far too little. Most people think they earn far too little. If there's anyone in this room who thinks they're earning enough or what they have, well done you. Recognize it as a blessing. You are not average. Okay? Most people are faced with rising costs. And I know this not just from an emotional point of view. I work in economic sectors where we get data that looks at this. The costs of the average household are just crazy at the moment. I'm telling you things you know, I'm sure. Most of us know that we have the highest unemployment rate in the world for a society of our nature. And this is not, we are not exempt from this. In Cape Town, we are not exempt from this. In Pinelands, we are not exempt from this in this church. Unemployment is a major problem. Societally, what do we deal with societally? Society, we live in a world where black tax is a major issue. For those of you who don't know, there are communities in this church and in this area of Pinelands and beyond where it is imposed on you the obligation that when you are an income earner, you have a responsibility not just to your family, to your extended family, to your family's connections, to your extended families. It goes on in ways that you have no idea how complex it gets. I get told this all the time. Michael, you have no idea the demands that get made on me. I get a phone call in the middle of the night. Somebody says, my son's school fees have to be paid. And because they know that I earn a salary, they don't even know how much I earn, I suddenly have to step up. So what happens is there is societal pressure, and then, of course, there is generational pressure. I'm a father, 3 children. I'm a grandfather, 2 granddaughters. And there is pressure on, we all say, how on earth do our kids today afford the things that we could afford? It was difficult for us. It's impossible for them. What are our grandchildren going to do? And we're supposed to talk about giving and generosity, aren't we? But this is our reality. Can we face it? Can we own it? The fact of the matter is, and I've been serving on the Credit Ombud Council for a number of years, just recently left it. I still chair the National Consumer Goods Ombud Board. We have seen credit debt traps happening left, right, and center. Unsecured loans, left, right, and center. People have, and please, I know all about this. Store cards, unsecured loans, it's an absolute nightmare. Avril and I, at one stage, were at so much credit debt, we didn't think we'd ever be able to get out of it. It was just, it looked horrendous, it felt impossible. We got to a point after an immense amount of sacrifice, an immense amount of discipline. We got to a point where the credit I had available to me, the amount of actual credit I could use, was so much that I could walk into a car dealership if I had chosen to. I could walk into a car dealership and put on my credit card and buy a brand new car. That's how much credit I had relieved myself of. I mean, at that point, I had to eventually say, please, to the banks, just cancel, cancel, cancel. I do not want you to even allow me this amount of money. Now, I didn't deserve it. I didn't have the salary for it. I mean, it was insane. I was living in a time when banks and financial institutions would just say, no, another 20,000, yes, another 100,000, yes. It was crazy. We've got legislation that stops that. But it was at a stage where it was insane. We don't know how to manage our money in truth. Most of you, I say this, please, if I'm offending you, I do not apologize. We don't know how to manage our money as a society. It is just impossible. We have an illiteracy level, a financial illiteracy level, that is actually quite scary. And I'm saying, before we get to the giving, before we get to be generous, can we learn to be smarter with our money? Because you do not need to earn more to start winning. You don't. That is not necessary. I came here today with a couple of buckets because, and then I said to Matthew, please give me a better picture than the buckets because it's not going to work. But this bucket has holes in it. And for most of us, our month looks like this financially. The buckets just have holes. It just goes and goes. What we would like is a bucket, our financial bucket, to have no holes. What we in truth have is a bucket that has holes. My son says to me, Dad, my bucket doesn't have holes. It just doesn't have a bottom in it at all. I'm like, yeah. No, that's the deal. That is, in fact, what is happening. I'm going to say to you today, I'm going to talk to you today about how to close the holes in the bucket. That's the discussion today. I'm going to talk to you about how biblically we are actually given encouragement and instruction on how to close the holes in the bucket. I know what you'd like to hear is how to get the bucket to be more full. And I want to say to you, please come back next year and we are going to talk about that. I've spoken to the church leadership. We are going to have a program together, and I'll speak a little bit more about it later on, about how, in fact, we can make the bucket more full. But there's no point in trying to pour more into the bucket until and unless we've gotten to the point where we have closed the holes in the bucket. So here's the deal with this. Let's look at what the scriptures have to say to us about how to close the holes in the bucket, the discipline that is necessary, the first thing that we need to do in order to do this, in order to be able to give in a way that shows and reflects a generosity that makes everyone else think, how is that possible? How do I not have that? Why can't I be like that? So let's turn our attention just initially to Proverbs. And I'm going to start with, the problem with the Old Testament is some of the terminology in here is very complicated. But okay, this is the wise man Solomon. He wrote, supposed to be the wisest guy in terms of the authors of the books in the Bible. Proverbs, for those of you who don't know, is in the Old Testament. I want to say to you that if you've been dragged here just to come to church and been offered lunch and wondering what this Jesus stuff is all about, it is easier to understand the Bible if you're busy consciously trying to develop a relationship with Jesus. I say that. That's just true. That doesn't mean there are not truths in the Bible that can be great for you. That doesn't mean that what I'm about to say for the rest of the time I spend with you may not be relevant. But have a look at this. In the Lord's hand, the king's heart, that's you and me, is a stream of water that he channels toward all who please him. In other words, your heart, your need to be generous, can actually be channeled in a way that is beneficial to all. The problem is, a person may think that their own ways are right. This is the problem. But the Lord weighs the heart. The Lord looks at your heart and says, hold on, I can do this. In fact, if my hand is leading your heart, I will do this. But if you think that your arrogance is good enough, then I need to weigh your heart. Now, I'm going to call you out on this. If you're struggling with money today, look at your heart first. And the first thing I'm going to ask you to look at is your heart for generosity. Let's go on and look at verse 3 of what Proverbs has to say. To do what is right and just is more acceptable, is what Solomon says to us, to the Lord, than sacrifice. And then it speaks about being proud and looking at what produces sin, the pride. I know what this. I know my story. I have heard so many people tell me, Michael, I know how to run my business. And you ask questions, and the business is running at a loss, and they don't know how to manage their cash flow, and there are all kinds of financial problems. But I know how to run my business. Look at the car I drive, which the bank owns, not you. The plans of the diligent, it says in verse 5, lead to profit as surely as haste, bad decisions, leads to poverty. I'm calling you out. I'm calling me out. I'm calling you on a journey, and I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you. I make no apology. Let's go from Proverbs. Let's try and find a slightly more friendly piece of scripture. I find the New Testament works a little bit better than this. Paul wrote to a young man called Timothy, and when you look at all the pieces that have been put up about the projects that we are supporting through Love in Action Month, you will see 1 Timothy chapter 6 is referenced quite often. Please go and cross-reference it for each of those. But I'm going to just talk to, for our purposes, just pull our attention to Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 to 10. This is what God is busy saying to you right now, saying to us right now, calling us out on. Godliness with contentment is great gain. We brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. Now, does this mean we must be neglectful? Does this mean we don't have to stress? Does this mean we don't have to worry? Does this mean, no. None of those things. It means that we cannot make our money the obsession that so many of us make of it. We cannot allow the money itself, the wealth itself, the opportunities itself, to be the reason that we live, to be our primary area of thinking and concern. In verse 8 it says, but if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. This is saying, deal with the basics. Deal with the basics. Now, I've seen too many people, they want the best shoes, the most interesting brands, the latest. I work with clothing retailers. Fast fashion is a thing. We love the fact that people want to buy the newest, the best, the different, the colors, the fabrics, the styles. Yeah, I know all about those things. Are you willing to look at the basics? And then in verse 9 and 10, those very familiar verses, I'm sure you heard someone say this to you at some stage. Those who desire to be rich. Not those who are rich. Those who obsess about being rich. Those whose entire focus is about being rich. Those for whom all they do is think about the money on the basis of, I want it to be more, they fall into temptation, into a snare, into the senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Now, again, I've had such interesting conversations with people. They come to me and say, but Michael, I just want to be able to pay for my children's education, man. It's not a desire to be rich. Okay, it's private education, but never mind. I just want my children to be able to be dressed properly. I just need us to be able to drive that car, live in that area, and those are, it's not rich. If your point of departure is I want, if your point of departure is I want, if your point of departure is I think I need, which is actually saying I want, it's a desire to be rich. And look at what Paul tells Timothy, that Timothy must share as news to those who he's ministering to. It's a temptation, it's a snare, it's a senseless and harmful desire. It will plunge you into ruin and destruction. This verse, of course, many of us know. I'm sure you've heard it. It is quoted and misquoted all the time. For the love of money, not money, the love of money, the root of all kinds of evils. It is through that craving that many have wandered away from the faith. And I have seen with my own eyes many, many people who have come to church only because they want God to bless them financially. And when it doesn't happen, they turn their backs on God and say, God, you have deserted me. Why, my God, have you left me? Why are you not listening to me? Pierce themselves with many pangs. It's so stressful, so tough. I'm supposed to be talking about giving, eh? I'm supposed to be talking about generosity. They have not learned that first, even before you want to look at what is in the bucket, even before you want to look at how to fill the bucket, you need to close the holes of the bucket. So let me tell you how to close the holes of the bucket. In Acts, our next piece of scripture, chapter 4, verses 32 and onwards, the full number of those, we are told, this is the early church, who believed were of one heart and soul. And no one said that any of the things that belonged to him or her, just for my wife's sake, was his own. But they had everything in common. And with great power, suddenly there is immense opportunity. The apostles were giving their testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was upon them all. Let's just stop there. We're going to go look at a couple more verses in the scripture now. In the beginning of the church, it is not about what you own. It is not about your possessions. It doesn't say you can't have possessions. It says here, no one was focusing on and obsessing about and bragging about or even talking about their possessions, their goedes, their things. And that released the powers then, as a consequence, released the power of the apostles to just talk about the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. Being able to say, just in and of itself, I'm not obsessing about what I have. And again, please, if you're one of those people who can fall asleep at night without worrying about what is going to be on your table and how to pay for the roof over your head tomorrow, I am grateful for you. I am excited and happy for you. The truth of the matter is, more of us then should be willing to admit, more of us should admit that we actually worry about it in ways that makes us not really being able to say, we don't say about these things that belong to us. I treat what I have and all that I have as that is being in common. Now, my son was in the earlier service today, and I had to just quickly say, it may be that I treat it as all in common, but you need to wait for your turn to get what is mine. You need to focus on what is yours for now. Just, okay? My daughter may be listening online. So what does it say then in the next verse, which becomes very confusing for some? There was not a needy person among them, for as many as were owners of lands or houses sold them and brought the proceeds of what was sold. Now, please, it doesn't say, because people love throwing this at Christians, it does not say they sold all their houses and all their lands, and everything just got thrown into the pot, and there was complete irresponsibility about it, and we all just sat and sang together. I spoke about singing. Singing is a problem. I told that earlier on. We just did worship together. Let me use Matthew's terminology instead. It's much better. We just worshiped together. Oh, no. It doesn't say that. It said that there were people who were able to be comfortable about having buckets that were full because they did not have holes in their buckets. Why did they not have holes in their buckets? Because as and when it was called upon them to be needy, their point of departure, their first thought was, how do I give? And how do I give? Generously. Is this not an example of generous giving? Is this not generosity here in action? Now, you may say, okay, I'm okay. I don't have 2 houses. I don't have many lands. I have to say to you, whether you are unemployed or over-indebted or black tax implicated or credit card, you have. All of you, all of us, we have. We get to choose what to do with what we have. We get to choose what we want to do with what we have. And we can, if we choose, to make the first thing we think about when we think about our assets and our wealth and our richness and our money. When we are blessed, the holes are closed, when the first thing we're thinking about is, what are the true needs of others around us and how can I meet them? It doesn't say you must meet every needy person. This community ended up having not a needy person in their community. It wasn't the responsibility of any one person to meet the needs of all. So I'm not asking any of you to solve all the indebtedness in this room, in this church, in this community, in this city, in this country. I'm saying you can be a contributor to an outcome, a community, a church environment, a culture, a family, where need is not a problem. If your first thought is to be generous, to lay what you have at the apostles' feet. And again, you don't need to bring it to the church. That's okay. I know that our church giving team want all the money you've got. But you don't have to bring it here. You can bring it to many, 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 many places. There are many places. We'll talk a little bit about it and allow it to be distributed to each as any had need. You close the holes in the bucket by starting to think firstly, when you have what you have, about how to give. For my wife and I, we started out with nothing, and we decided we are going to be giving. In the first instance, we chose a number. It wasn't a percentage, it was a number. We're going to give a number. Every month, that was what we were going to give. We have transitioned now to giving based on a percentage. As income comes in, the first thing we do is we set aside the percentage that we have chosen to be given. That's the first thing we do. It's a whole closing exercise. We have also developed some other disciplines. I'll touch on one or two of them later. And I've said to you, come back in the course of the next year. We need to do this together. We need to learn this together. We need to encourage and enable each other together. There are things you can do to help you manage the bucket better once the holes are closed. But if your point of departure is not, I want to be generous because I am blessed. I am blessed. I know you feel like life is a challenge. I am blessed is your point of departure. And you are willing to then say, I can give. If your point of departure is not that, then everything else doesn't matter. I'm not saying you can't get rich without being generous. I'm not saying you can't get comfortable without being generous. I'm saying that the Bible points us to a solution of comfort in who you are, and what you need. It points us to that by telling us to, in the first instance, think about being generous and think about being given. So here's the challenge now to you. The spiritual you. Find a way to give consistently. Not sporadically, not your leftovers, not your, this month I can afford to give the church, this month I can afford to give this NGO, this month I can afford to help so-and-so, this month I can, because there's this little over, and if I'm giving from Peter taking from Peter to give to Paul, no. I'm saying to you, find a way that there is consistency in that. We had people in the various organizations I was involved in. The way they did that was they set up debit orders. Straight, easy. That's what happened. Every month, we as a NGO organization could rely on this amount of money is coming in from these people on a consistent basis. It allowed us to budget. We say to people, I challenge you, pray over your budget. The first prayer you have is, how can I be a giver? The first budget item you write down is, What do I have to give? Now, I know all the financial advisors, and here I've got to be very careful. I know that financial advisors in this country are supposed to be people who are qualified. They must have all kinds of letters behind their name. They must have all kinds of pieces of paper they can show you to prove. So this is not a financial advisory service now. It's a sermon, okay? Don't go tell anyone Michael was giving us financial advice. Michael does have a financial degree qualification, but I am not I don't have certification to give you financial advice. I'm talking to you as a Christian. I'm talking to you as a Jesus follower. Pray over your budget, and let the first thing in your budget be, what am I going to give? What am I going to give? What am I going to give? Is it the quantum? Is it a percentage? What am I going to give? I promise you it closes holes. It won't close your holes from October to November. Well, if it does, good for you. That's a wonderful blessing. It closes holes over time. Our journey took months. Some of the holes were very persistent. They took a couple of years to close, but they closed. They closed. I've journeyed this with people who are Jesus followers and people who are not Jesus followers. It's easier if you're a Jesus follower, but I've journeyed it with both times, friends who are Jesus followers and not Jesus followers, and it works. Come and prove to me that it doesn't work in a year's time. Pray over your budget and practice gratitude. We are simply not grateful enough for all that happens. Your financial journey. Have a zero-based budget. We're going to talk some more about that next year. I promise you we're going to have opportunities of being with each other, of talking through and with each other. Have an emergency fund. I would love to have this conversation more even in this talk, but unfortunately it's not possible. And then this cut debt thing. I was challenged to use cash. And the comment that was made to me was, Michael, save up for a car. I told you earlier on about how I technically had enough money to go and buy a car. I didn't buy the car. By putting my credit card down, it would have been too expensive kind of debt to have. But I have not financed a car since 2011. In the last 14, 15 years, I've not financed a car that either Avril drives or I drive. I refuse to allow the bank to be the major beneficiary of the car that I drive. I save up. For a number of things, I make sure that there is cash. The advice you're given is go and withdraw the cash, hold the cash in your hand, and walk into a place and try and then spend the cash. It is so much more difficult to part with cash when the cash is in your hand. When it's just a hypothetical, theoretical, arbitrary number that just floats out of your credit card, I mean, it's just so much easier. And there are a whole bunch of elements we can talk about here. The skills. Next year, we're going to be on a major skills drive. Our skills drive is going to be around that financial literacy I spoke about, because I want us to be great givers by this time next year. I want us to be celebrating great givers. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Teach your children. Teach them well. I know my kids suffer. I know my kids struggle. I've got adult children. They struggle. They're better off than 90% of South Africans, probably by extension 90% of the people on this planet, but they struggle. I teach them constantly. And then accountability partners, please, can we get to the point of being able to say to others, my wife has been a great accountability partner for me. That's been wonderful. I have deliberately asked friends of mine to hold me to account, including in financial areas of my life. If you don't have an accountability partner, start yesterday, because you cannot develop a discipline of financial giving without an accountability partner. And then I want to assure you, God will honor your discipline. You don't have to be perfect about it. You really don't. There are different ways of doing this, but God will honor your discipline. And what do we do as a church together? What do we do as a church together? I've repeated this a few times. I'm holding ourselves to account. I'm holding this church leadership to account. I'm holding you to account as well. We need to have proper financial literacy workshops. Not just Michael standing up front here saying it's possible. We need to be talking to each other and engaging with each other and interfacing with each other and saying, how do we do this? How do we show that it is done? The early church did it. They write about it, they did it, they reflect on it. We need to have the kind of accountability groups, not just people, but we need as a church to have groups where we hold each other properly to account. There is a benevolence fund in this church. Please, if you don't know about it, it is a transparent exercise. This church is a giving church. Please go and ask who runs this fund, what does it do, how does it work, how do I get involved in even if you just want to have line of sight of it and not just necessarily give to it, understand what good, accountable, responsible Christian giving is. This church has a benevolence fund, a giving fund, because we have chosen to close the holes in the bucket by being givers, generous givers. And we will see the bucket increasingly full because the holes are closed. As communities, it's not just a church responsibility, it is a community responsibility. There are families and people struggling around us. As in Acts, it's about recognizing there is need. We can't solve everyone's, but we can keep making a difference. Get out there, go and read those items on the board that have been put up and make a difference. Partner with NGOs. Become a board member. Become a fundraiser. Please, don't tell me you don't have time. Because if you're saying you don't have time, you're saying your first thought is not about the discipline of giving your time or your money. Your first thought is about yourself. And I'm telling you now that as long as your first thought is about yourself, the bucket has holes. I want us by next year, this time, to be standing here together and saying, my holes in the bucket were closed, and this is how we won. This is how it made a difference. This is how I've been able to be more generous. This is how my giving has changed. I don't want to know how wealthy you are. I want to know how generous you are by next year, this time as a community. Dave Ramsey, who I would encourage you to go and listen to online, Dave Ramsey said, live like no one else now so you can live and give like no one else later. Live like no one else now, because I'm asking you to do things that are counterintuitive, contra-societal. If you're feeling a bit like, why on earth did I come here to listen to Michael this morning? He's called me out on all the wrong things and all the difficult things. Please, if you're thinking that, you are hearing the right message, because I'm asking you to be different, because that's what Christians are, so that you can live and give like no one else later. And my last thought is generosity is not the end product of your wealth. It's the beginning, the pathway to the freedom, the peace, and the purpose that God has in mind for you, for me, for us, for our society, our communities, our church. That is our calling. And God bless you if you're willing to take up that challenge and that calling with me. Amen.